Welcome back, guys. This is episode number 6 of Calm India. In this episode, which is going to be a really short one, we are going to explore a little bit in detail the application of the acceptance technique. For this, we are going to touch upon the concepts of second fear, and we are going to understand behavior spirals and certain typical behaviors associated with certain moods. Second fear. What's really interesting to note is that people who have anxiety are still capable of the normal stress response. What really gets to them is second fear. So, what is second fear? Essentially, this is a reaction or negative thought spiral that we've discussed before. That you face a situation, and the moment you start feeling anxious, you start freaking out about the fact that you're feeling anxious. In other words, it's your anxiety giving you more anxiety. And this is where all of the disorders start. Normally, just feeling anxious because of a situation is fine, but when it leads to a separate and new cycle of thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, that is what we need to address. You start getting scared of the symptoms themselves. The moment there's your racing heart or a shortness of breath, that freaks you out more and more. And remember how we said that this is where you need to use acceptance therapy the most? Once you identify your second fear response, that is where acceptance therapy needs to be. That's the point where it all begins. And you start telling yourself that all of these symptoms are alright. It's perfectly fine to feel these thoughts. This is a little bit similar to symptoms exposure that we spoke about in one of our previous episodes. Let's move to how this second cycle affects our behavior, and it creates new behavior cycles themselves. Behaviors. It's important to understand that once a very strong emotion kicks in, it's going to lead to certain behaviors, whether it is completely trying to avoid a particular situation or just plainly doing nothing. Here's how it works. You wake up in the morning and you're not really feeling up to it. You're feeling a little bit down. Because of that, you end up doing much less than what you planned to do. Because of that, you feel even worse. And when you feel worse, you end up doing even less. So this is a completely negative spiral which you keep going down into, and at the end of the day, you end up doing little or nothing. The key is to understand that inside your mind, if you can go in one particular direction, you can almost always go in the opposite one as well. Which means that normally you have your emotions guiding your behavior, but you can do your behavior guiding your emotions as well. So how this works is it's incredibly simple. If you're not feeling up to it, if you're feeling really low, regardless of that, instead of a large target, set a very small goal. When you achieve that goal, you'll end up feeling a little bit better. And because of that new, even if it's a small amount of motivation, because of that new motivation, you'll end up doing a little bit more. And once you've done a small amount, which is much more than what you may have done in other cases, you'll start feeling better. And then the whole thing just keeps going upward from there. The key is to understand that every time you feel low, you start inserting either your trigger word or acceptance thought at that point of time. It's alright, I'm just feeling nervous. It's alright, I'm just feeling anxious. Or these are just negative thoughts. Let me just do a small amount of work anyway. Typically, every kind of mood tends to have a certain set of behaviors. For instance, for depression, you have the feeling of just not going out from your home or wherever you live. Even if you have commitments or you have to meet people outside, you end up not going to meet them. If there's a work that you're supposed to finish, you don't have the motivation to do it. Sometimes all you're doing is just sitting in one place and not achieving anything at all, and it only serves to make you feel worse. Anxiety. With anxiety, you typically start making excuses and try to escape social situations. Anger. If you're constantly angry, you either start being really sarcastic with people or you end up shouting and screaming at them. I know that it might seem a little bit difficult in the beginning, or you won't be able to do it just at the start, but it's extremely essential that you acknowledge when you're doing these behaviors. When you're gripped by an emotion, you tend to lose the ability to think or think beyond that situation. But you have to force yourself. Every time you're in a particular mood, examine your behavior and acknowledge it that, yes, this is happening. This is a kind of behavior pattern that I'm falling into. And that's where you start using your acceptance therapy to guide it. Like we discussed before, even when you're feeling anxious or not up to it, if you use acceptance, you'll be able to push yourself to do something which you are actually going to enjoy in the end. For instance, even if you feel like not going out, you say that it's all right, I'm just feeling like not going out because this is a behavior pattern, but I simply have to go out. And then when you do this a few times, what happens is that when you actually go out, you'll end up having some fun, or you'll end up doing things which you enjoy, which will make you feel good. This in turn will train your brain. Like we've discussed before, it's almost like creating your new conditioned response. Every time I feel low, I know that I'm going to force myself to go out. And every time I go out, I feel good. In turn, every single time that you start getting bouts of anxiety or depression, your mind will automatically start telling you, go out, it will make you feel better. Go out, things will improve. And this is one of the greatest tools available to you as a person who wants to grow and change yourself. Normally, it's our subconscious thoughts and emotions which guide our behavior as well as more of our dominant emotions. But the cool thing about your brain and about humans is that we can use our conscious thoughts to say something persistently to ourselves, and this in turn can train and reintroduce new behaviors into our subconscious mind. And with that, we've come to the end of our really short episode. Before we close, let's summarize. We learned what second fear is, and second fear is feeling anxious because of your anxiety. And this kind of thinking about thinking creates a second cycle of thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. We learned that this is the point where all the disorders actually start, and this is also the point where you need to start using your acceptance therapy. We then saw how feeling strong emotions leads to certain behavior patterns. The way this plays out with people who have anxiety or depression is this: you feel low, because of that, you're not able to do your work, or you end up doing much less than you planned. That makes you feel worse, and because of that, you end up doing absolutely nothing. The cool part is that we can go in the opposite direction as well, where we use our behaviors to guide our emotions. The way that works is you do a little bit of work, no matter how small it is, and it's going to make you feel slightly better. And when you feel slightly better, you'll end up doing more work, which in turn will make you feel significantly better. And this collective motivation is going to help you do and achieve much more, or at the very least, improve your behavior greatly. With all of this knowledge, we ultimately came to the conclusion that even though normally our subconscious thoughts and beliefs guide our behaviors and thoughts, we can, if we try persistently, do the opposite as well. That we keep repeating certain new patterns that we want to ourselves, and we can use our conscious thoughts to retrain our subconscious mind to work for us. And that's how we ended the episode. In the next episode, we are going to look at stress, which is the number one killer. It's a word that I've been using, that we have been discussing about through the entire course. But what actually is stress, and how does it interact with your body and with your mind? We're going to find out in episode number 7.